on the session. Yeah. So in yesterday's session, we have seen how exactly RDS works in the background. We have seen the RDS architecture and how the multi-agent available zones are working. If one is getting failover, how exactly the secondary is becoming primary, and how when the secondary is getting down, how then how the primary is reacting. So we have seen this practical yesterday, and anyone got a chance to try this? Okay, so just go to yesterday videos. So I have uploaded 3 videos. So there was some glitch or error from when we created for the first time. So we created again one more RDS yesterday. So during the lab test, right, I have uploaded the third video as a test lab. Second video is like creating the lab for the second time. Third video is we have seen how exactly we need to test. So how to make this primary when 2 servers are there, how to make the primary one down, and how the secondary is getting reacted and responding through MySQL Workbench. And we have seen the EC2 instance of primary and secondary getting changed based on the failover what we are trying to do. So so today we will be discussing about AWS Redshift. So any queries before we go to today's session?
Harish, one question.
Yeah, Guru.
The MongoDB, what's that? Is it not applicable for AWS? Is it only for?
So yeah, so there is some option for Amazon Document DB. This is nothing but MongoDB, Guru. So
Okay.
so outside how we install MongoDB, so here we call it as document DB. So here we can use for MongoDB. So we'll see this tomorrow.
Sure.
We'll not do the practical lab, but we'll see how exactly this, how we install MongoDB and work with, right? Same, it is called as document DB in AWS.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So there are other databases as well, like DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is AWS own database. This is NoSQL based database, which is like key and pair, which will be similar to JSON. And you can directly query for the serverless applications and all. Nowadays, this is becoming more popular because the throughput time is very high. And Elastic Cache is a database which will provide you low latency requests. So for example, in India, we know Tatkal ticket booking, right? So Tatkal ticket means next day morning, 10 o'clock, the tickets will be open. Till 10 o'clock, whatever the availability, say for example, in one tier, and this 2 tier, okay? So one tier availability will be 100. And so if I'm traveling from Bangalore to Chennai, so if you see the tickets, there are 100 tickets in one tier and 125 tickets in 2 tier. So till tomorrow morning 10 a.m., how many times you come and hit the database should show how many available tickets are there for Tatkal, right? So all of it will be 225 including one tier and 2 tier. So for example, I'll come and check. So it will show 225. Like this, if 1 lakh users will come and check from Bangalore, whoever is traveling, so the database load should get all the 1 lakh request, process it, and the database should give the response for all those 1 lakh requests, right? So imagine what is the load. So for all the 1 lakh people till tomorrow morning 10 a.m., we are going to give only single answer, which is we have one tier 100 tickets and 2 tier 125 tickets. But but imagine what is the load the database is getting observed. So what we do is, so Elastic Cache. So before, say for example, this is your database. So before your database, the Elastic Cache will be here. So whenever the user will give the request, Once elastic, so we need to create an elastic database cache and give this configurations to our developers. So our developers will configure this in the application so that whenever the user will come and hit, any user will come and hit, so it will initially, it will one time it will go and hit the database, collect the data, means 225 it will collect the data which is of 100 plus 125. So it will keep the data in the cache. So from the cache, so if any other users who is coming and hitting the database, they will be not directly, the request will not hit to DB. So initially the developers will configure the request to hit for elastic cache database. Now in the cache, we already have the data of 225, which is to be responded till tomorrow morning 10 a.m. It will automatically, without asking for the database, it will respond back to the user saying that these are the availabilities of 1 tier and 2 tier till tomorrow morning 10 a.m. By this, what we are doing, so we are not pushing the complete external load to the database, but we are serving our customer as per the real-time scenarios. So this is one type of scenario where elastic cache will improve your performance and throughput by reducing the latency and providing the fast response time for your customers. Questions here? So are you clear why elastic cache database is used? Yeah.
Harish, can you just describe it once more a bit? It means quickly, not
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. So elastic cache is something like an intermediate database which will act as a quick catch. Like for example, in your applications you might have seen, right? So for example, when you go and hit the database, if the database is giving the same result until some given particular point of time interval, say for example, in our case tomorrow morning 10 till 10 a.m. if 1 lakh or 10 lakh or 20 lakh people also will come and hit, since the Tatkal tickets are not open till tomorrow morning 10 a.m., whatever the existing availability is there, that they need to show to the end users. But because so that is the use case. So now because the load is directly coming and falling on the database, the database need to respond for all the users same query. So it is not necessary to hit all these requests to the same database, right? So we are creating an intermediate elastic layer cache database, which will accept all these external requests. And internally, this will have the data which needs to be responded to customers. Say, for example, 10 a.m. we have 225 tickets. This already have the data. At 10 a.m., if there is any change, then automatically the application will communicate with the database with elastic cache, and it will get the updated one and it will pass it to the customers. So the external load will be redirected only to elastic cache. So this elastic cache will in turn check with the database. So what as a engineer you need to provide when they ask for elastic caches, you need to create elastic cache and provide these details to developer so that the developer will configure this before hitting to the database. Clear?
Harish, so the data which would be sitting in the elastic cache, right?
Yeah.
That would be a temporary kind of thing, right? I mean, when I say temporary, it's not like but it will have some time bound.
No, the data which is here is a real-time data only. It's not like the cache or something like that. So, but it is used only for the specific use cases where you no need to hit the database for every time.
For the same kind
Yeah,
of information.
yeah, for the same kind of information.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's see Redshift here in today's lab. We will configure this and check, and we will discuss QLDB, DocumentDB, and Neptune tomorrow. Okay, so Amazon Redshift, it is also a database which is based on the PostgreSQL. Okay, so we have seen RDS on MySQL or Aurora, which is open source, or you can also configure with Oracle or SQL or some MariaDB, right? So Redshift is a PostgreSQL, which is built on top of PostgreSQL. The major use case for this one is for getting the analytics. So, for example, your company, your organization is having a lot of data which is needs to be analyzed. Okay. So, for example, let's assume. Okay, I have some PPTs. So yeah. So Redshift is morely for solving the data warehouse problems for small and bigger companies who doesn't require to manage their own data warehousing, clusters, nodes, and other materials. So let's see what exactly data warehouse is and why it is. Right. So data warehouse is like integrated time variant and non-volatile collection of data for the organization decision making process. So in this data warehousing, you collect many source data from many sources, and you need to make sure this data is organized, and this data is online, and it is available for analytical platforms, so that the front end systems will come here based on the data what we have segregated from various database data sources and different clusters and different nodes. They will decide some analytics, so they will create some reports based on the past data, previous data, and existing data. So that's the major use of data warehousing. So in a typical architecture of a traditional data warehouse, you will have four parts. One is data sources. So the sources of data will be collected from different clusters or nodes. So it may be from operational database, or it might be some external data sources like from third-party APIs and other calls. So once the data sources are collected, then we will have a warehouse where we'll store this type of data into different clusters, nodes. We also call them as data marts and data warehousing products. So in the this is the bottom tier architecture where the infrastructure is storing all those data sources, right? So then we have one middle tier layer where this online analytical platform servers will be there. So this data which is available on this particular data sources, they will be analyzed and they will make sure that this data can be queried by anyone, so that in the top tier who is having in the front end, they can create some analyticals, query reports, and data. They can do the data mining and do the organization decisions. So this is a traditional data warehouse, how it works, right? Here, so to establish for a small startups and all, to establish this type of data warehouses to query the reports or analytics, it is a huge task. So that's why Amazon has introduced Redshift. So if you see the disadvantages of traditional data warehouse, so it is very difficult to deploy all these resources, right? So for example, bottom time architecture like data warehouses, data marts, and this infrastructure, it is difficult to deploy and maintain. And also we need to make sure the performance issues should not be there. So we need to do a well architecture, keep a lot of engineers, increase the servers, and make sure the data is sent to the analytical systems without any latency or increasing the throughputs. And for example, if data is too high, then you need to immediately scale your systems. So when you scale the systems immediately, after some particular point of time, if the data is low, again you need to scale down the systems. So so that was one of the challenge. And cost is obviously important, right? Suppose if you are managing a dedicated team for this one, for maintaining the infrastructure, for maintaining the backup softwares, analytical softwares, and other things, obviously the cost will go high for the organization. So those are the traditional disadvantages in maintaining the data warehouse. So Amazon Redshift is here. So what Amazon Redshift data is, it is parallelly column oriented database deployed in AWS platform that makes it simple and cost effective to analyze all your data across your data warehouse and a data lake. So data lake is nothing but a collection of data from various type of sources. So for example, you have your Excel sheet. So you can send your Excel sheet to that particular data warehouse or the database what you have created. Or you have JSON file, you can push it. So you have some your from MySQL, you can push it. You have from Oracle, you can push it. So any data source, what you have, so either you, to comma separator, to hash separator, to Excel or CSV format. So they allow in many formats to push the data into the data clusters or database, what we create in AWS Redshift. From here, since this is developed in PostgreSQL, they provide a very fast and efficient for the querying people. I mean, so from here, once in the Redshift you create a cluster, right? You'll get an endpoint. Using this endpoint, you can use tools like yesterday we have seen MySQL workbench for connecting MySQL server, right? So here for Redshift, we have some other tools like SQL connector. Either you can use SQL Oracle SQL connector, or now they have introduced in the user interface itself for query editor. So in query editor also you can query and you can check the data very quickly. So basically, Redshift is collecting the data from many sources, like it's like a data warehouse, and anyone can query to this data warehouse. It provides very fast response time. The technique what they're using is Redis cache. So this is the technique what they're using. That's why it is very fast. Okay. So major concepts of how exactly the Redshift will work, right? So even I have not dig much into this in detail, but this is the high level architecture, what exactly, how exactly the Redshift will work. So you will have client applications here, okay? So you can connect to your client applications either for query editor or for SQL editor, or you can get this through programming. Like say, for example, if you are writing a Java code, you can use JDBC and ODBC drivers or MySQL drivers to connect to this particular endpoint and collect the data. Now, how exactly we will connect? There will be a leader node. So once you create your cluster, right, in the Redshift, so the multiple nodes can be associated to that cluster, and the data can be dumped here from different nodes. So now you can these client applications are available to pull the data from the particular endpoint. So let's see that when we are creating cluster in Redshift. So in a nutshell, this is in a high level overview. Let us try to create one Redshift cluster. Later I'll take up if any questions are there. Okay, so let's click on cluster, create cluster. So Redshift cluster is there. 1 minute. So cluster identifier. So let us give one name like August 1st batch, Redshift cluster, and free tier or production. So you can select for free tier also. So free tier, you will get some MD5 X large, I guess. Redshift congratulator. So let us select free tier. So if you are doing, if your organization is doing, doesn't have the Redshift, which is configured from 2017, you will get a free tier account. So for example, if you are logged in as a free tier account, right, then it will be shown here. So for example, I used Gmail. So I got this free tier activated. So same thing if I'm using some, for example, organization like some Wipro. So then Wipro, if already it is used, right, I will not get this option. So if you are opening with gmail.com and checking, you will get this free trial option. That's all. Okay. So if you see here, DC2 large, I guess this is the instance which you are getting for free tier account. and you will have number of instances, right? So for us, let us take only one instance, which is more than enough to do our simple database. So here in this lab, we will do mostly four things, guys. One, we are going to create a cluster. First thing is, okay, let me write in lab notes. Create a Redshift cluster. Second one is, so while creating cluster, you need to give how many how many clusters you need to do. So you can take D2, this freighter one, D2.large into one node is enough. So you can configure up to 128 nodes also. Let me show you that one here. If you go to production, so here you can choose D2.8x large is there, right? So if you want more performance, up to nodes you can select here, up to 128 nodes you can select. So but for us, we are doing this for the trial lab, right? So we will be not loading that much data, so you can go for free trial. They are going to give DC to large node, into one node they are going to give. So select this one. Okay, so after this one, configure the database. So your database name can be anything, like let me give as test. And your default port for Redshift will be running on 5439. Okay. And master username I'll give as root, and user password is so don't give any special characters, so it will be plain password. Okay. So cluster permission, suppose if you are using any IAM roles, so you need to create one IAM role and allocate this one. So let us go to add IAM role, or let me create from here. Okay, so I already have an IAM role. So here what we are going to give you is AWS service role, Redshift full access I'm giving here. And network and security. So select your VPC, in which VPC you need to select. And you can select your security groups. I'm selecting August 1st security group, and a cluster subnet. So you are going to create a cluster of nodes, right? So for example, this is the, like this you are going to create. So in which subnet you want to create this cluster of nodes, so that they will, you can select here. So I already see, for example, initially if you're doing for the first time, you will not get this option, cluster subnet group one, because I have already done this lab last week. I am getting this option. So initially, if you don't get any option, so go back to your, uh, I mean, your main link here, and you can see subnet groups here, right? Under configurations, click on the subnet groups, create a subnet group here. Okay. So so for example, I'll say demo hyphen subnet groups. Select your VPC. Here you select your availability zone, choose the subnet. Okay, now I added all the availability zones and the subnets. So if you create cluster, then now you can see this demo cluster also there. Initially, you need to first, before creating the Redshift database itself, create the cluster group and come here. Go to the clusters, create cluster. See, many organizations, it's not mandatory for every organization to use Redshift. It's purely based on their use case. If they want to do some more analyticals things, or pull the reports and check, they can do this one. And by the way, this is not multi-agent environment like yesterday how RDS we have done, right? If one cluster is going down, we will spin up a backup cluster and all. It's not like that. If one cluster is going down, what is there? We can collect the data again and create in a new cluster, right? So we don't want any backup of this one. So altogether we are collecting the data into one place. And why we are collecting here? Once you throw the data here, from here it is very easy to retrieve and check. That's the reason we are using this particular Redshift tool. So this is test. Master user. Select your IAM role. If you come under network and security, select the VPC. Now you can see two clusters here. So demo cluster group we have created. Let's select demo cluster group. And availability zone, if you give preference, so if I give 2A, now the cluster will be generated here. If you don't give preference, randomly it will generate in any one of the zone. And enhance VPC routing. So I don't want to enable that. Public access, yes, because I want to connect from external and check. So database configurations, Redshift. I don't want any encryption methods. And maintenance, I'll leave to default. Monitoring, I'll leave to default. Backup, I'll disable it. So I'm creating a cluster now. So before that, check this link, AWS.
So Harish, does it make any difference when you create it in a specific zone or sorry, in a specific subnet or without giving any preference? Does it make any difference or no difference with that?
See, if you want to create under 2A means you need to select that. So if you don't care where it create in your own VPC, if you're creating 3 subnets, one in zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, it will create any one of the subnet. So if you have preference, then you can select that option. If you don't have any preference, by default it will take any one of the subnet.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a document here. So just type AWS S3 loading for Redshift, right? So now what exactly we are doing is we have created a cluster. Now in this cluster, we need to fire some schema, right? We need some tables and we need some data, right? So because we are creating a database, in the data warehouse, we need to put some data. So we need a schema to create tables and some random data. So to push inside these tables, and later we will see how to query this schema. So we will see how to query the schema to create tables and how to load data from S3 bucket to clusters. After you load the data, we will see basic querying from user UI, basic querying from user interface, and we will see how to connect to analytical tools. Okay, this is what we are going to see. This AWS has provided some default schema if you want to try for the Redshift. Say AWS Redshift cluster. For this, what we need to do is, so you need to create a S3 bucket, and in that S3 bucket, you need to store the data. So let me show you the step-by-step process. First step, these are the steps. Okay, so create a cluster, download the data files. So I'll show you how to download the data files. Then upload these files to S3 bucket. Create the sample tables. Run the copy commands. Vacuum or analyze the database and clean up your resources. This is what the lab which we are going to do now. So we already created a cluster. Let's see how to download the files. Okay. So go to the sample files. So now data is loading, right? Loading data sample zip. So once this get downloaded, then you try to load this into your extract these files and load it into a S3 bucket. So when you extract, you will get these are the type of files. Okay, let's get this downloaded. Meanwhile, I'll open S3 in another tab. So yeah, I guess I should. If you see here, I have already loaded this one in this bucket. Yeah. Let me extract this one. 7zip load. So if you see here, so these are the tables, right? So basically what we are going to do is they will give a query for us to create tables. There are 4 tables, I guess. So 3 tables in this case. One is table called part. Okay. The second table is DW date. Third table is customer. So for example, you created a table part, right? So if you're trying to, we are going to keep all these files in S3 bucket. So each file is nothing but some collection of data, some random data. So for example, part CSV table, right? If I try to open this one, you can see the data here available, correct? So this data, say for example, each file contains around 49K or 50K, around 50K rows. So this, since we need some mass data, right, which is to be stored inside this cluster. So that's why we are loading all this through S3 bucket. From S3 buckets, we have some commands in the Redshift, which we can automatically fire and load the data into the particular tables. So for that, let us follow this document step by step. Now we have completed step 2, downloaded this loading files, extracted this one. After extract, we are able to see all these files. The third one is upload these files to S3 bucket. So till here, are you clear? Any queries? First step, oh, come on. Next step, where is the previous step? Yeah. So before this. So these are the 7 steps which you are going to do. First step, we have created the cluster. Second step, we have downloaded the data files. Third step, we are going to load these files to Amazon S3 bucket. Till here, any queries here? Or if you're, are you not sure why we are doing all those things?
Harish, you're saying that first we'll download that compressed file and then we'll extract it and then upload it to S3.
Yes.
So can't we directly upload that compressed file there and unzip it there, or that facility is not there in S3?
I'm not sure whether you can unzip directly in S3 or not, Salesh. So if you're using CLI, there are commands to unzip, but here we are using the user interface, right? So I just don't want to complicate multiple things in one session.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. And Harish, can you just copy this URL into the lab notes?
Yeah, I'll do that. So see, first try to understand what is Redshift. Redshift is nothing but it's a data warehouse where you can collect the data from multiple sources. right now I don't have any schema which I can get some 50,000 rows or 100,000 rows immediately, right? So I'm taking an example of what AWS is provided to practice your Redshift lab. Okay, so here they have a data, so they'll be giving the queries also. You can see the sample tables in step 4. Okay, so you will have sample tables and they have the sample data available here. You need to download this data, but to load this data they have some specific format. You cannot directly push it like copy paste this notepad file. So you can see here, right? You cannot copy paste directly and you cannot push it. So if you want to insert this one, you need to write some insert query into that particular database, right? So but there are some other ways to load. They have some copy commands, so which we'll be discussing in step 5. Okay, so right now you just try to understand why we are creating Redshift cluster. Redshift cluster is collection of data from different sources, and once the data is collected there, it will organize the data and it will query whenever the user is querying the data, it will provide the response in a faster manner. Because they're using a Redis catch technique. That's the reason when you query, so for example, usually you will not directly use from the user interface like how I show you in lab. Usually you'll be connected to a Power BI. Say for example, this is one of the analytical tools, or Tableau is there. So using these tools, you will go and connect to Redshift. Once you connect to Redshift, then they will select the data. So then the data analytic engineer will select different type of data, and he will be selecting and creating graphs and other things in a short span of time. Clear?
Harish,
Yeah.
it's more like looking like it's a big data kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I heard like we can use S3 also, right, to store like big data stuff.
So you can store, say, but it's all about like a data warehousing, right? So how fast you are going to get the data. So
Okay.
again,
I mean,
if you're
just
using S3, then you need to use your own big data code to pull out and query it and to analyze the data, and you need to report the data. Here, you are only querying the data. When you're querying the data, you are getting very fast. Remaining job, Redshift is doing, right? You are not going
yeah.
to invest on a data engineer who knows big data to organize the data, to analyze the data, and to send the data for the query. That job is done by Redshift here.
Okay. I mean to say semi-structured, structured, any
Yeah.
kind of data we
Yeah.
can push.
Yeah. So if you see in our yesterday lab, we have seen MySQL, which is a structured
Yeah.
data. So
Yeah.
here, either you can push structured data or you can push unstructured data. So after creating the tables, I will show you of querying, like say for example, select query or insert query. It is structured queries, right? For the structured queries also it will respond. For unstructured queries also it will respond. Unstructured queries is nothing but this one, right? So if this data is not in a proper format, but
Yeah.
still we can, using some commands, we can push this data into the data warehouse. So
Okay.
Redshift will support both the type of database, either NoSQL database or a proper SQL database.
Okay. Harish, something like AWS EM or something. Are we going to discuss like in the future?
No,
Okay.
Kiran. Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, now if everyone are clear till step 2, let's do step 3 here. So click on the upload files to S3 bucket. So here what they're doing, step 1 is create a bucket in Amazon S3. Okay, let's do that first. Create a bucket. August 1st Redshift is the bucket name. And let me copy the settings from Redshift. Okay, so we have created August 1st Redshift bucket. Okay, so first step is done. We have created a bucket. So to create a bucket, so this you can see our S3 lab if you're not sure how to create a bucket. Now select a region. So second one is create a folder inside a bucket. Click the name of the new bucket. Okay, so we have already done that. So click on actions button, click on create folder, and create a new folder with load. Okay, let's click on load. Sorry, save this one. So okay, so then upload the data files to the new S3 bucket. Click the name of the data folder, select file wizards, add file. So this is nothing but, so we have extracted our files here, right? So copy this location and upload these files to this particular load folder. Upload. So next, I'll keep in standard one. The last time. So within some time, it will be all the files will be uploaded here. Okay, so all the extracted files are uploaded to this bucket. So what is the next step here? User credentials. So Amazon Redshift copy command must have access to read files from S3 bucket. If you use the same user credentials, create S3 bucket and run Redshift copy command. Means here we need to create one IAM role, which we already have done that, and with that IAM role has S3 bucket access and Redshift access. Okay, so this step is already done. So next step is create sample tables here. So this is the tables which we have downloaded now. So we have seen part table, customer table, DW date table, and some other the fourth table, right? So this is how these tables are there. So the line order is the primary table, which will have foreign reference keys of other table primary keys. Okay, this is the main table, and these are just some. So we will not load the data for all the tables and check. We'll, after creating the schema, we load for, say for example, part or customer. For any one of the table, we will load the data, and we will try querying in the particular table. Okay. So initially these are the schemas. Now create the sample tables, right? So for example, if you are already partially created the tables, you can drop using this schema, or if you're creating for the first time, copy this create table. So go here. So I already have some Redshift SQL. Yeah. So busy here. I have copied here. I'll try executing from here. So go to. So now open your cluster. Once you open your cluster, so you try understanding what are the options here. So if you want, so you can connect your Redshift cluster using the endpoint here. So this is your endpoint. You can give this endpoint and connect through SQL connector, SQL query editor also. So right now we will just use this because we are creating only for one day, loading one data, right? So it will not take much time here for query editor. Let's use the internal editor what they provide to us. So new connection, database name is test user root, right? Password. Okay, so if you're using SQL editor, so they will ask endpoint also. Since you have selected the Redshift cluster here, it will automatically pick up endpoint through backend. So connect to database. Suppose when you're trying to use from SQL editor, right? If you're not able to successfully connect, just go and check the security group whether you have allowed that port, default port it was running in 5432, right? So make sure that port is enabled. Okay. So you have different schemas here. So this is the query editor. So if you see here, select stuff from dual. Let's check if it returns something. So this is some dummy query which we can fire on some either MySQL or Oracle, right? So it will return some. Okay, so it's not returning on SQL ones. Yeah, let's execute these queries and check. Sorry. So I have copied all these four tables. One is part, supplier, customer, DW date, and line order. So copy these queries, paste it here, and I think you can execute. So you can see the results here. So you need to do one by one here. So you cannot execute all the queries at a time. So first let me execute one query. Then copy the second one. So if you're using SQL editor, this is the advantage, right? So you can execute multiple schemas at a time. So if you see the query is completed, let's execute supplier table. So done. Then customer table. Yeah. And line order. Okay, now we have completed these queries, right? So if let's go to database document, then run the copy commands. So this is step 5. Step 4, are you clear? Step 4, we have just executed the tables, the example tables, which is where we are going to load the data, right? So we have executed that. So if you want, you can fire the query here and check, right? No data is there. We have just created the schema of the table, right? If you go here, so for example, down from line on. So this is simple SQL query. So you should get the table, but this table don't have any values. It should get at least the columns which are available in line order. So line order, you can see here. This is the columns which are available in line order. Like that, you can query for part table also. So this will be a bit slow. Don't think that why this is slow, then why people are going to use, because of the network connectivity and other parameters. When you query, obviously this is slow, but in real-time environments, when they configure Redshift and all, it will be very quick. It will not take this much time to do. Okay, so this is line order table is completely empty, so we don't have any table data here. So you can check other tables like part or something. Parts or part. Okay. So the table is empty, right? Now let us see how to load the data into this particular table. Okay. So go to your S3. Okay. Next step is, let's follow the document so that you will also know. So step 5, run the copy commands. So any query still step 4, are you clear, right? See, if you're see, this is not that important. Not every organization is going to use this one, but it is good that you know how what is Redshift doing, and if you do a lab, you will have a better idea about Redshift. Yeah. So if you want to now, since already we kept the data source in S3 bucket, right? So if you want to copy, there are some copy comments. The data the data what we kept here is not a proper SQL data. It is no SQL data, right? So you can use some copy comments to load the data. So for example, you have different files, cust data, text.t01, t002, like that. So from when you load the data from S3 bucket, all these files will be loaded and the data will be pushed into that. So for example, cache data means it will go to customer table. Okay. So for that you need to create and follow this one. So this step I already created IAM role and attached to in the beginning, right? So you can also follow the steps to create IAM role and attach. And here so when you are copying the data, right, in some, if you see null as is there. So for example, when you are trying to execute few commands, say for example copy commands, so when you execute this command, it might fail. Why? Because in your data, if you see some fields, null is there, right? So when it is null, it might throw some error. So those scenarios and all, they have some different null as CSV. Okay, copy the, yeah. So if you are getting null, make sure that you enter 000 instead of null. Like this, there are, so if you follow step-by-step process, everything will be clear. Okay, now let us see one command. So for example, so copy this command and I have my Redshift database here. Okay. So I have copied this command. So here we need to give your bucket name. After that, load is there and key prefix is already there. Key prefix is nothing but the table name. So for example, if you're loading the data to a part table, you need to give part table. If you're loading the data to customer table, you need to give. If you're loading for line order, you need to give line order.tbl. Okay, so what is your bucket name here? So you need to copy your bucket like this. Say for example, earlier bucket was like this, Harish hyphen Redshift. So if you go here, our bucket is copy bucket here. So this is my Redshift bucket name. After that, I have a load folder. After that, in that folder, I have this particular file which we uploaded, right? And here you have credentials, right? So when you are if you see, remember while attaching the IAM role, we have made one programmatic access, right, for the IAM role. That is the access key will be there and one secret key will be there. So I'll try to use the same key and check if it works or not. And okay, and so this command is going to fail. See, in part table, say for example, I'm selecting part table, right? In part table, since I already have null values here, so when I'm trying to fire this command, it will throw failure. So whenever you have some null one, you need to consider like this command in it. So I'll try to replace this. Let me execute this command. So select query, I'll create new tab. I'm just load part. say, yeah. So what exactly I'm doing is I'm loading from S3 bucket. This is the table, I mean the path, and I have already a role which has the access for access key and password, right? Secret key. And if any null values is there, this in the format of CSV, if any null value is coming, just replace with 00. That's what I'm going to tell here. So error at syntax on this position one. Let's give 00 and check little load. Yeah. So if you see here, so this is the table part, and this is the access key and the secret key, and if any null is there, this is there. So now what I have done, so from whatever the table, the data is there in this particular file, I have loaded into this particular table. Initially, if you see here, the table is empty; it didn't had any values. Now, using this command, we are trying to load the data from S3 from this particular location to this particular table. So now if you run this command, now you need to get the values which are available here. So these values will be inserted to that particular table and you will be able to get that values here.
Harish, but
Yeah,
in
no,
your query, right, there is no mention of that table, right? Like no reference about that table where you're trying to insert the data.
this one.
That is the one which
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have
So
uploaded
yeah,
in the,
so this will
okay,
be picked. The part is there, right?
okay,
Yeah,
that's table.
yeah. So it will pick up this table reference directly.
Yeah, but this part -CSV is probably the one which we have uploaded in S3 bucket, right?
Yeah, yeah. In S3
We-
bucket, if you
I think Navita, the part table is after copy. So it's saying copy
see
part
here.
from,
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
that's, this is the
Mm,
query.
Got it.
this
I
one.
missed that initial thing. Sorry. Whatever is in green, right? That looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One thing. So if copy part means part is a table, and for
Correct.
this table we are loading from one of the. If you see the.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I missed that
Yeah.
part. After.
No, no. Oh, fine, fine. So if you want to push the data to DW date table, right? Then you need to write here DW here, DW date. Then you need to pass the DW values here.
Yeah, yeah,
So then it will be pushed. Okay, so if you see the query one, it returned all the values which are available in that particular table, right? So if you see here, let's say count of start from count. So let's see how many values has been inserted here.
Harish, is there a way to load all the part files in one go, or we have to do it one by one?
See, initially when I practiced, it was, see, follow this command, see, this one. So you must give optive only here. So after this table, whatever is that, it should automatically pick up and load. That's my understanding. So try this one once.
It says that if you can load multiple files by specifying a key
Correct,
prefix.
correct. So that's why you keep your. Yes. So
Yeah.
say when you're practicing this frame, go through this one. So if you see key prefix, so this is the one. So like this CSV format means why they are telling CSV format. So if you take max 5 to 10 minutes to read this one, so you will get better thing. Understanding. Okay. If you see here,
Yeah.
6197 rows are there in this particular file which we loaded. Okay. Like this, you can load the data from for different, say for example 001, right? The other file 001, yeah. So execute this query. Okay, it is completed. Now if you go and check here, select count of star from part. Earlier it was around 6197, so 6000 change. Now if you see 12,000 records are there. Like that you can load for all the tables. Okay. So once you loaded these query details and all right into the database, your job is done. So now what you need to do is you need to provide the cluster details. So for example, you can cluster, yesterday we have seen, right, how to connect to endpoint. You need to provide this endpoint, or if your analytical team is using JDBC or ODBC, you can use your Java code also. So for example, actions, configure, so query. So these are other things like generally query monitoring, maintenance and other things. You can check it here. So if you are using JDBC URL, so it's for example from Java you can connect to Oracle or MySQL, right? Similarly from Java you can connect to Redshift also, but your JDBC URL would be this one. You can use this URL and connect. But for this jar file you can download from, I guess they have provided some link from here, because they changed the complete user interface recently. So query editor is a config. Yeah, here. So select JDBC or ODBC and download the drivers. So what driver you want to click here? If you click on download, that jar file will be downloaded here. You can put this jar file into your Java build path. Then you can start working with your Redshift data as well. Okay. And okay, so for example, let me show you Power BI, right? Power BI, yeah. So this is one of the Microsoft tool which is used for open source tool. This is Power BI for using, so you can download from this location. Just type download Power BI. So you'll get a download link here. So from there you download the installer, and once you install, you will get a like this Power BI desktop. So I'll show you just how to connect to Redshift from different tools. You can download in like Tableau also. If you're from analytics background, you can connect and you can see how to query, how to create graph and all. But I'm not from that background. I asked one of my, I mean my brother, not one of my friends. So my brother to just create a sample dashboard for this particular. I guess I asked for part table, and he has sent me a snapshot. I'll show you that. Don't want to say. So if you click on get data and get for more, yeah, if you see here, here you have Amazon Redshift here, the data sources. Select the Redshift here, click on connect. It'll ask for the server. Go and give your endpoint here, Redshift endpoint. Copy this endpoint, and database is test advanced options. So if you want to import the data, whatever the data is there in under this test database, it will download at a time. And after downloading, you can query or analytic. You can create graphs and all. If you do direct query, for every option what you select, it will go and hit the Redshift database, bring the data, and it will query. Direct query will be always bit late. Okay. So to download import data, it will take some time, right? So I will just show how to direct query. Username, it's the username what we gave is root, right? Root, password, go to connect. So once you connect, it should automatically load the data. Control connecting. Server must be in a format host name colon port number, which the port number is optional. Okay. Port number, I guess it is running in 54. Okay. So we need to give only till port number because we are all giving test. It's not required. Let's give only till here. Okay, just give the host name and just port number. No need to give the schema name. Schema name you are already giving below, right? Root password. Connect. Yeah. So if you see, it's got connected now. So you have 4 schema folders, right? Whatever we have executed: customer, DW, line order, part, and so in part table we kept the data. So either you can load this data or you can transform this data. So this is the data which is there in part table. So you can select this one and click on load. So from here, the analytical will know how to visualize the data and send it. So let me show you the snapshot. Sorry. So like this, you can, let me download this one. So they can create a dashboards. So for example, when I loaded some 3, 4 tables. So 50K records are there. And you can collect different type of, say for example, in part query, you have different data fields, right? So so he has selected some few graphs and he kept like this. You can create a dashboard, analytical dashboard. This job is till here. If you can load successfully and give it to the to the data analytic engineer, from here it's a data analytical engineer job to load all these things. So you no need to worry about all this. Like he will select what exactly will be there and how to create graphs, what is this data and all those. Any queries here? So now we, if you go, we have done the step 5. We have loaded some data, right? And one next here, vacuum and analyze database, right? So you can click on vacuum and analyze queries to Redshift query editor. So after running these both queries, then the data will be vacuumed and it will be analyzed. Then the querying will be a bit faster. Vacuum and analyze. So you can check it here. Step 6. So this vacuum, like whenever you add and delete or modify significant rows in a particular table, right? You need to vacuum and analyze command. Vacuum recovers the space from deleted rows and restores the sort order. and the analyze command updates the statistics and metadata. Okay, so then clean up your resources. So if you want to delete this one, you can use the schema and delete and drop the tables. So if you go here, so this is how you can create a cluster. So, and let us go. So you can read these links, how to, what are the best practice of loading data and designing tables and designing queries. Okay. Okay. So it takes some time to execute, analyze data. So any queries here, or you didn't understand what is Redshift, how to create a cluster, what exactly, which VPC you need to select, which subnet group you need to select. After getting a cluster, you'll get an endpoint. Why you are using that endpoint? That endpoint is nothing but the RDS endpoint, similar to RDS endpoint, what we used yesterday, to connect to different analytical tools to pull the data and analyze the data from this particular data warehouse what we created. And there are some other tools here. If you go to marketplace, if you want to load the data, right? And so data integration, some AWS data lakes also you can integrate here, glues, fix site, and Tably server. You can bring your own license, like yesterday, as I told yesterday, for Oracle and all. For RDS, if you want Oracle, you can bring your own. Similarly here, if you want to analyze this data warehouse with the Tably server, you can bring your own license and you can use it from here. And you can set alarms, events. These are we have already covered in CloudWatch. And query editor is nothing but see, earlier this query editor was not there, queries were not there, and marketplace were not there. Now recently they added, around one and a half year ago, they have added these ones. So earlier, if I want to connect to Redshift database, I was downloading SQL editor. Then from SQL editor, similar to Workbench, I was connecting to SQL editor to fire these commands. Now I have got this UI to directly execute from this user interface. Okay. And you can save some queries under this query. You can see previous executed queries and clusters. There is a cluster. So then remaining everything is standard. Like you can take a snapshot backup, you can upgrade, you can pretty much do everything. So if you see the dashboard, you have one cluster running, total nodes are 1. Suppose if your data is too high, which you are receiving, you can increase your node count like that. Okay.
Can you once show that, the security key, you had a role already created, you quickly jumped and just once.
Yeah, sure. Go to your IIM. So go to your users. So create a user group. Give the like Redshift user, programmatic access, permissions. Here you need to attach policies like you are using what services? S3 full access, right? Sorry, S3 full. Give S3 full access. Then Redshift S3 role and Redshift full access. So these three, if you're giving this, I guess it's not required, but just for the safe answer, just give these 2 roles. Then go to tags, name, ABCD. So these are the 3 roles which you are providing. Create a user. Once you create a user, you will get access key and secret key, right? So download this one, copy this access key and copy the secret key into your queries here. If you see my query, this is the access key, right? ID equal to this access key and secret key, this is the ID. This one for the secret key. Then you can fire this query into, say, let me try.
I mean, that part is clear.
Yeah.
So those policies are the standard probably given by AWS, right? Based on what
Yeah.
all, wherever you want this user to have.
Correct. So this user, now we give Redshift S3. Suppose if this same user, if he is going for working for EC2, then we will provide EC2 full access like that. So I'll try to cover IAM next week.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm pretty much, we already covered IAM, like what are the roles,
Yeah,
what are
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean,
users.
we have, of course, discussed
Yeah.
this probably while
Yeah.
discussing other bits.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Harish, is there any
yeah.
interface in here only to upload any data directly? Like we have loaded like from S3 data, right? S3 something we can directly upload from here.
See, if it is a structured data, right, you can always upload using SQL queries here. Okay, so select,
Yeah.
insert into, using the insert queries, insert into the part table, and you can give that part command. So if you have the data in a structured manner, you can upload directly from here. If it is unstructured, either you can upload it from the copy commands, or there is some other option. I couldn't recollect that.
Like whatever, for example, a log file is there, 1 GB log file is there.
Yeah.
For example, suppose if it is present in S3, then that is unstructured, and how I cannot load into database table, right?
So you should make sure that there is some format you follow. Like, so for example, this is your data, right? So for example, first column is what? Part ID. Second column is part color. So from your log one, first you need to make sure your data is either in this format or in some any CSV format. So you need to convert to that format. Then you need to load it to your data warehouse. Okay. So queries.
There'll be more queries when we get to do labs, Harish.
Yeah. So
You know,
it's not
when you
mandatory that it's not everyone are using this Redshift, but
no, it's not. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So when you explain, right, it makes, I mean, especially it makes feel that, okay, it's all clear. But of course, I'm sure when you do things right is when you're going to stuck at some place.
Yeah. So, but try to follow this document link. This is a
Yeah,
clear document. It will help you to.
sure. I mean, of course, understanding the concepts, how it's operating, you know, what's the background picture,
Yeah.
that those things are clear. But I guess having hands-on, once you do labs, probably multiple times, not just
Yeah.
one time,
Yeah.
is when.
Yeah. Okay. Can we, if no queries, before we wind up today's session, from batch one, can we? Anyone has prepared for 2 minutes topic?
Who is there in batch one? There are only 7 participants.
That's what I was saying. That isn't anyone from Patchwork?
Okay.
Sorry, Harish, I forgot completely. I am one of
No
the batch.
problem. Yeah, no problem. Okay, we'll do it from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Monday. Yeah, Monday batch 1 and Tuesday batch 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If no queries, let's wind up today's session. Thanks for joining. Good night.